Welcome to the Wild Holy podcast, where we explore the untamed edges of the sacred in all its mysterious emergings. I am Stephanie.
And I'm Faithe. Today we're diving into a conversation that's raw, radiant, and rooted in the deep mystery of transformation. A little alliterative tickle for your listening ears.
Love the alliteration, Faithe.
Thank you.
And today we are joined. We're not nerds here. I think we've already revealed that that's
I think so.
not true. Yeah. We showed our hands. Anyway, we are joined this week by a radiant person, Jess, who is an intuitive, a seeker, and someone who has walked through the fire of personal upheaval and has become transformed in wildly holy ways. She is someone that I know who often says something like this: that is wild. So through the unraveling of a long-time marriage and the courageous letting go of a career that no longer fit, Jess has found herself standing at the edge of the unknown again and again, heart cracked open, spirit stirred.
And her path led her to Reiki, to Oracle decks, and encounters with the sacred threads of synchronicity. So Jess's story is one of reclaiming truth, embodying freedom, and saying yes to the mystery.
So, Jess, welcome. We are so honored to hold this space with you today. And our first question is just, who are you and where are you from? Who are your people? So let's start there.
Well, I'm honored. What a beautiful introduction. I'm like, wow, is that me you're talking about?
It is you. It is.
So I appreciate that. And I guess I'm not really sure how to answer who I am, just because I feel like it's constantly evolving and changing. And I think that's been part of my journey over the last, I truly would say last decade, probably really actively working on changing those parts of myself. But probably 5 years ago, I would have told you I'm an educator and, all of that, and would have defined myself by my career. And before that, I would have said, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and all of those things. And now I guess I'm just Jess, and I have lots of passions and excitement. And I am very enthusiastic and positive about most things. So I guess that's who I am right now.
I love that. You are, I know this to be true about you, that are you 100% Italian, Jess?
Yes.
So you have a long lineage rooted in Italy.
Yes.
What was your religious, spiritual background? What was your family like? Let's start there.
Wow, we're just diving right in. I love it.
We're not messing around here. Yeah.
No, we're just going for it. So yes, I'm 100% Italian. So both my parents are 100% Italian, and my grandparents on my dad's side lived in Italy and actually came over here. And so I actually went to Italy with them when I was 18 years old and saw the houses that they grew up in, and was actually spending time with my great grandmother who is still alive over there. But anyone who knows kind of anything about Italy knows it's kind of like that core of Catholicism, and that was sort of the only option. Like that was your religion. And so much of the kind of Italian culture, values, religion, spirituality all kind of came over with my grandparents, and that was really how they raised their family here. And so I was baptized in the Catholic Church. I did my first communion in the Catholic Church, and that was kind of like the beginning of our religion as a family.
I find it interesting that you have this connection with Oracle cards. The tarot originated from Italy. From the card deck, the Tarocchini, I think it was.
I didn't know that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's true. So that's the historical lineage of Oracle decks, which were a more modern occurrence, like the 19th, 20th centuries. And yeah, they followed the trend of using playing cards, essentially, as assigning archetypal meanings to those cards and then using them for divination. So there you go. There's your back. I know.
I love it.
Jess, Faithe is exactly the person who would know that.
I think it's so cool. And you know what? From watching the earlier podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, she really does know all of these facts.
Goodness. I don't know if we want to move from your background into how you started to get into Oracle card readings and what you find meaningful for you in using them in your life as a spiritual practice.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. It's kind of a long winded answer, but, grew up in the Catholic Church. And then when I was in about third grade, and I remember it, like I remember, even though I was probably like 9 or 10, my mom decided to actually transition us from Catholicism to the Protestant church. And that was a really radical thing in our family. That was definitely something that you don't do. And so my mom was looking for something different in terms of that spiritual connection. And so we kind of followed that church all the way up through, like, I went and did my confirmation there in high school. And then after that, didn't really have any sort of church or religion that really spoke to me. But when I got married, one of the things that I had to do was get married in a church at least. So that was one of the things that my family wanted, even though I didn't really have a connection to that. And I didn't really love the community and never really felt myself there. So I, kind of went through all of these different obligations. And then I got divorced, which you also don't do in Catholicism. You don't do that in my family, like, being in Italy and like that growing up. And it was really that process of stepping outside of the norm that I was at least grew up in and was accustomed to. I distinctly remember in 2019, I was watching, I'm like pointing to my TV that you cannot see. I was watching Eat, Pray, Love, and I had seen it before, but for some reason, the pray part really spoke to me. And I was like, that's what I've been missing in my life. I've been
Mm.
missing that. And I'm like, where do you get that? Like, where does it come from? And it had popped into my head out of nowhere. Um, Maybe I should go and get Reiki. And I didn't even know what Reiki was, just
Huh.
landed in my brain. And it was almost my birthday. And I was like, I'll do that for my birthday. This will be my gift to myself. So I searched it up and I was like, oh, there's a place like down the street. I'll just go there. And this Reiki master that I met there must have been, who is this girl? I show up late, frazzled, just like very on brand for me at that time. And I was just a hot mess. And she's like, what are you here for? I was like, I have no idea. And she's like, oh, have you ever heard of Reiki before? I'm like, nope, I'm open, whatever it means. Like, I'm open to it. And it was just such a spiritual experience for me. And I felt like I was forever changed after that first session. I felt like everything about how I saw the world, everything about my perspective, everything about how I felt about myself altered in a way that is hard to describe. And that was at the same time where I started seeing signs with numbers. That's when I started dabbling into the oracle cards. And I didn't
Mm.
even know that there were all these different kinds and all of these different, the art on them is just beautiful, and
Yeah.
crystals and all of that. And so it was really stepping into that, like, I'm missing something like spiritual in my life. And for some reason that was my step into that, I guess.
Oh, that is interesting that you would be called out of thin air to see a Reiki practitioner. Was there any moment during that Reiki session, did you have a particular insight that you could be like, oh, this changed in the way that I view things? Or was it something a bit more non-rational than that? Was it just like something clicked and things just looked differently?
Well, so I went in, like I said, not knowing literally anything about Reiki. And the first thing that I noticed was how like hot her hands were. And that was something that felt so unique, right? And then I remember feeling just this immense sense of calm, which again, me showing up like frazzled, late, like that's just encapsulates like who I was at that time. And then at times kind of dip back into, but and just feeling like that ease and that calm that I had never really truly experienced. And then what came to me during the session was just these almost these images, these downloads that, I didn't know about. And so I felt at peace, initially, and it just transformed from there. But the other crazy thing was when I was leaving, she said, you were very out of alignment. We kind of reset all of that. And then she said, the energy around your left knee definitely indicates to me that there was some sort of traumatic injury there. Has there ever been something that's happened to your left knee? And I've dislocated it 3 times. And so it was just this wild thing to me. Like, how would you know that? I didn't show up in some sort of brace. She was reading that
Right.
energy. And blew me away. And it was everything after that too. How would you know that? How could you really tell that? Where is that coming from? And just now being tuned in almost to that world of this unseen. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Stephanie, I don't know if you could, for our listeners, might be helpful to have a brief explanation about what Reiki is. I know you also do energetic healing of a different kind, IET, integrative energy therapy. So if you could introduce that to everybody so we just get a better orientation.
Yeah, and actually Jess and I met at an IET training.
Oh,
So I mean it's
Jess.
Well,
Tell us about energetic healing. Like how does that work, and maybe even the difference between Reiki and IET?
yeah, so Reiki is basically, tapping into those different energy centers in the body and um, clearing different areas where there might be, a blockage. Typically, so I guess it's unique to think about like as you're explaining it, but I usually get, images and it's at times you can have your hands on a person, but they can also be, slightly removed as well. But the energy is flowing through you and then you're using that energy to kind of align and balance different chakras. And I know. I'm like, okay, how do I even break it down further? Stephanie, is there like another way that you could like explain it?
No, I mean that was beautiful. One thing I would say is I think Reiki understands itself as being about divine, universal, loving energy.
Hmm.
I think it's coming from Japan. It's coming from someone who kind of channeled, I think he was a monk. Don't quote me on that. But I think, there was a channel kind of receiving a reception of this sort of energy practice. And then it started to be shared here in the US. I think it was began in maybe like the 80s or 90s, maybe a little bit earlier than that. Now and it was very fringe when it came here. It was very California, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, but now it's more and more mainstream, and all these, I mean, there's a lot of healthcare professionals who are getting trained in Reiki.
Yes. Yes.
So, what I would say about IET is that, again, it's channeled energy, conscious, intentional working with angelic energy, which is sometimes even like people can get behind like universal love energy. When it comes to angels, it's like, what? Record scratch? So, to each their own.
Yeah.
But you did a beautiful job explaining it, Jess. And you're right. I mean, it's energy, so you can have your hands on someone, be working in that way, but also you can have your hands be removed. I've done energetic sessions at a distance. It's energy.
Yes. Yes. Again, like you have to kind of get beyond what is seen. Like that's it. I guess that's the part that's wild,
That's
right?
a really good point. Yes.
Because it's not tangible except for that it's accompanied by this
Mhm.
just intense calm and peace. And so it's amazing. That's why they use it in hospitals. That was obviously my first experience with Reiki. It's just tuning in. You're tuning in and connecting with the person or yourself on a level other than the cognitive level. It's beautiful in my opinion.
It sounds beautiful, and I love how you're saying that there's this realm of the unseen and tapping into that unseen realm and just acknowledging that there is something there is the first step. And so it sounds to me like that experience of Reiki for you kind of broke open an understanding or just a knowing experientially that there is something of deep substance in that
Yes.
unseen realm. Yeah. And I
Yes.
love how you are now gifting that to other people through your own energy therapy.
Yeah, and even it's funny because sometimes people don't even realize the connection. Like my daughter, for example, it's just that calm, that regulation, that the hands on. And she hears us talk about Reiki all the time. My mom and I talk about that, even with the self healing, how you can truly tune into yourself. I clench my teeth at night. And I think it's just a lot of tension. And I always end up picturing it, the releasing of that. This is so weird, but it's like coffee grinds being washed out. For some reason, all of that tension holds in my jaw. And that's how I picture the clearing of that. Yes. But Reiki to me was transformative. Anybody who is looking to have that shift in in their world, honestly, and is ready for that shift in their world, I think Reiki is definitely a place to start any of the energetic healing.
That's really great. Thank you for that, Jess. I think people might be interested in at least looking it up on the internet,
Yeah. Yeah.
seeing what it's about. I mean, it's not hard to find a Reiki practitioner near you. I think it's becoming more and more popular. I'm interested, Jess, you've gone through some really challenging times in your life, and I'm just wondering, it sounds like Reiki kind of met you after your divorce.
Yes.
Is that right? So you'd had this sort of cataclysm. You got married pretty young in
Yep.
your early 20s,
Yep.
and you'd had a child, right? And
Yep.
then the marriage kind of fell apart or was in process of falling apart. And then Reiki kind of found you, that really like jump started your spiritual journey in this way. You've also been through a major kind of career transition too. So I'm wondering how the energetic work, the spiritual journey helped you transition. One of the things that you and I have connected about is that neither of us is currently doing exactly what we trained to do when we
Yes.
were in our early 20s. And I was in seminary. I mean, I'm still in ministry, but I'm not doing exactly what I thought I would be doing forever. And you're not in teaching right now.
Yes.
So can you just talk a little bit about that journey and how the Reiki and the spiritual components, and I promise y'all, we're getting back to the Oracle decks. We'll
Oh,
get
yeah.
there.
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's for us to remember, not for you.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering how that kind of was engaging with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was that kid like at 5 years old that knew I wanted to be a teacher for my whole life, knew I wanted to be a teacher. Didn't know what I was going to end up teaching. I wanted to teach elementary music. I wanted to teach band in the middle school. Then I wanted to do writing. And then I wanted to do math and science. Like, I just love learning. Ultimately decided on teaching English, ended up in a middle school. Um, and just was really, really, really passionate about it. And then felt myself working more with kids who were struggling, wanting to help other teachers, and ended up finding myself in this assistant principal role where I was doing just that. And then coincidentally, I had Reiki in the fall of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. I went to see with my mom and my sister, a spiritual reader, and we had a year-long reading done of what our 2020 ish would look like. And yeah, it was crazy. So this is pre COVID, by the way. And she had said, I see a big job change coming for you. And at that point, my boss had told us that he was retiring and he had asked me to interview for becoming principal. So I was in this process and she was like, I see that you get that job. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, you're there for 2 years and then you go off something out of state. And I was like, okay. And so she just went through a bunch of other things like my little puppy, who you may at some point hear barking. She's like, and I see you adopting a dog. So she had shared all of these different things, which was wild because like I had applied for 5 or 6 dogs at the time in the fall and we didn't get anyone. And she even mentioned your daughter's going to have to learn not to be so rough with her because she's like, I see you tugging on the ears. And she treats her almost like a little sister, like she's like a human.
How old is your daughter? Because
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
she's
know.
10. She's 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have an 11-year-old, but a boy. Yes.
Yeah. So you're good. You're good. And so she had talked about that. She talked about how I was going to get a new car. The car I had was red. And she's like, I don't know what color your car is now, but all I'm getting is it's fast and it's intense and it matches your energy, but that's not the energy you're going into. She's like, you're going to get a more neutral color. And lo and behold, I end up buying a white car. And it happened coincidentally. That was what was available. And so it was this kind of change. And so I became principal. I was there for 2 years during the most chaotic timing during COVID. Started the year remotely, tons of violence that came back, tons of mental health issues with staff, with kids, just on a very extreme level. Like I felt like maybe in those 2 years, it was like 10 years of experience, what I had experienced
Mm-hmm.
in that time. And it was, I think, the biggest struggles that people had, but I was kind of unwilling to let it go. Like I just was like, it'll get better and it'll be fine and I'll get through it. But it just wasn't getting better. And I think it just depleted so much of kind of my own soul. Oh, now there's my puppy.
There he is.
She's like, okay. And so I don't think if I hadn't been open to change and hadn't been brought into this world of the unseen, I would have been able to be courageous enough to take that risk to change my career entirely. So I went from a school, 700 seventh and eighth graders, a career I'd been in for 14 years, managing a staff of 100. And I dramatically changed to a role that offers me flexibility. I still work with people, but it's in the corporate sector and I'm a part of a team. I'm not leading a team. And it just dramatically changed my life to create more space for peace and softness and the things that I don't know that I didn't think I maybe could ever have. And I don't think I would have been open to any of that if not for my own spiritual journey and trusting this unseen and what's been brought to me and I've been led through and along.
What I'm hearing over and over is a breaking through of the holy in so many different ways. Reiki was the big one. That's where the spirit just came pouring through. And now you're just this porous vessel for spirit. So it's really neat to see. And how do you feel in this moment? Do you feel like more peace with what's happening, or do you feel like there's still some more changes coming? Or
So it's interesting that you say that because, yeah, I mean, I feel in my soul and body, I do feel very at peace. I think by nature, my personality is obviously, you can see high energy. I'm a little frenetic. I think I can go that other direction, right? Where I'm like spinning. But I think my spiritual practice and just making these decisions intuitively and connected to something beyond the logical or the practical has grounded me in ways, but then I am always in tune with what's coming next. I love looking at numbers in addition to the oracle cards. I have seen, so I've seen a lot of 555s, which means like big changes. And one of the things I said to Stephanie is I think I'm a very logical person. And so before all of the closing with COVID, it was cars one after another 555, 555, 555. It would just keep going. I'm like, what is going to happen? What's coming next? It's just that's out of the norm, right? Like, what is the actual likelihood of all of those cars having those numbers if not for something beyond, right? It's very
Mhm.
much like this is a message. And so I've seen a lot of the fives in order. And then sometimes I notice I've seen a lot of the fours in order. But usually I try to tune in and I say, oh, I just saw 3 2s in a row. What was I just thinking about? Or what was I just talking about? And how does that align with a message that is being sent to make me aware of something that I'm not aware of. And usually it's you're on the right path or be mindful of your thoughts. Because if you start getting into a negative thought pattern or you're
Mhm.
questioning things or losing faith. So I feel more stable. I do feel like there are more changes coming. I think that's just the nature of life, right?
Mhm.
Um, and this year's reading that I did for myself, I do a reading on the first day of the year each year, and I do the 12 months to kind of see. And that was something that really came through for me. My message for this year was to anchor because there's so many ups and downs this year, like some really high highs and some really low lows, and how that all balances out.
I'm curious, Jess. I mean, I'm not an expert in Catholicism. My sense is that probably you didn't learn in confirmation class or in Sunday school, pay attention to repeating sequences of numbers.
No,
Just
no,
guessing that that wasn't part of your Sunday school curriculum.
no.
How did you, because I remember when we started to talk about this, I think I said to you, if the spirit's trying to reach me through numbers, it's just going to go over my head.
Yes.
I'm not very oriented towards numbers or hadn't been. But as soon as you started talking about like, oh, I'm seeing these repeating sequences of numbers, I said, oh my gosh, I'm starting to see 1111 or
Hmm.
444. I saw it today. 444, 555. So how did you even become aware of that? How did that even enter your consciousness? Or did you notice the numbers first and then you're like, I'm just going to Google it? How did that happen?
Yeah, the first thing was a friend that I had had years ago who used to talk about seeing 1111, and that had periodically come up, but not really in a spiritual way. It was just like you said, the Holy trying to break through. Like I think the Holy was like, let's try this route, and maybe
Yeah.
she'll get the message this way.
Yeah.
And oh, no, I need to like it explicitly explained. It was after Reiki. I ended up being trained in Reiki as well. I'm a Reiki master, and my original teacher, she was the one who helped to explain. I'd be like, I see this all the time. Do you know what this means? Is this a sign? And she's like, yes, let me break this down for you. I'm like, oh, okay. So that was kind of where that came from for me.
Fascinating that it was after Reiki. That's so interesting.
So, as far as seeing the repeating numbers, I know that if you look up on Google, you can find out what is typically assigned as a meaning for, say, repeating ones or for any number for that fact. But yet there's still a personal element to it. So, I heard you speak about how when you saw those repeating numbers, you try to pay attention to what's happening in the moment. Can you tell me, where did you learn about those meanings behind the numbers? And then tell me about the personal side and how you discern like what it's applying to.
Okay, yeah. Where I learned a lot about the numbers and interpreting them, that was really from my first Reiki teacher. But then, and she was the one who had said, think about what you're thinking about, think about how it relates to where you are in that moment. But I think consistently for me, the fives are change, ones are new beginnings, and sevens are you're on the right path. But other than that, I find that my Google search will change. I don't always get the same answer. So sometimes I
Mhm.
might type it in and I'm like, okay, maybe this is the
Mhm.
way that I get a more direct response. But the other thing that I'll do is pull a card to see, like, can you clarify? What did that really
Oh,
connect with? Why did I see that? Or what is the change? What does the change relate to? What area of my life is the change in? And so I'll ask those questions and pull cards to that effect.
so as you're sitting with your cards, you're holding that question in your mind.
Mhm.
What is deeper behind me seeing this repeated number? You're holding that intention as you do the cards. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and really dig into it. Sometimes I say it out loud too. Like, why am I seeing
Mhm.
555 over and over again? And
Mhm.
pull the cards and then sometimes I'll be like, oh my goodness, can it be a little bit clearer? I don't know if I'm interpreting this the right, and then I can pull another
Yeah.
card and
Yes.
you know, but it can be an endless cycle of that too. And a lot of times it's about patience and it's about,
Mhm.
really tuning in. But yes, that's definitely what I would do.
I imagine it's a skill to approach with an open heart and open mind, and then that practice of holding an intention as well, and then listening and discerning what that message is for, and it sounds like you're pretty adept with it at this point.
Well, you know how we were talking about like the noise, right? And how I can be that like high energy, a little bit frenetic, and then that more grounded energy. And it's that more
Mhm.
grounded energy that allows you to listen. And it's not crazy, right? So if you pull a card, it's that first thing that you think of. Well, I
Mhm.
think this, and then people doubt it. Like you pull a card and you're like, I don't know. The first thing I thought about was my grandfather. The first thing I thought about was this story that happened when I was 5. That's what it is. That is your message. That is your answer. What happened when you were 5? Or what is it about your grandfather that is the first thing you thought about with this card? Um, and I think people think there has to be more than that. And there
Mhm.
doesn't. That's how it all starts. Are you really kind of tuning in and listening to what comes up for you?
And when you're tuning in, what exactly do you feel is the nature of what you're tuning into? Do you feel this source of love out there? Do you feel like it's your higher self? Do you feel like it's ancestors or angels? Like, what for you is that unseen element that you're connecting with?
I think it's all of those things for me.
Hmm.
Like sometimes I think it really is inside, right? Like it's like I'm uncovering and unwrapping these different parts of myself that maybe I've suppressed, maybe I've hidden, maybe I forgot about, or just haven't given enough attention to. But I do believe in tuning in with ancestors. I do believe in connecting with other spirit guides of any form, of angels, whatever you want to call them. I do specifically believe as well in specific people. And one example I can give, I was driving somewhere, didn't know if I was making the right decision, and felt this overwhelming sense of this smell. And it was this, how people kind of have like a smell, right? Like, I mean, they do, right? And it was my grandfather who had passed away. And it was like his presence was there. And so I could have just been like, huh, that's odd, right? Like, I'm driving, I'm in a closed vehicle, and this, like, that's odd, right? But I felt a sense of calm, like, okay, so he is with me and he's saying it's okay. And so it's how you interpret different things, I guess, in that way.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So I believe in that too.
So the unseen realm for you holds a multitude of presences and help.
Yeah.
My sense too is that it's positive,
Oh yeah.
that there's, because I think, a lot of people are really scared to connect to an invisible anything,
Hmm.
Mhm.
right? For whatever reason, there's like religious conditioning or there's just a lot of the unknown. What would you say to people who want to dip their toe into the water of some of
Yeah.
this? Like, maybe it's just being guided themselves, but where would you start, Jess?
I mean, I guess I would start where people feel most comfortable. I'm so sorry about my puppy again, by the way.
That's
So the
okay.
first The first thing I would say is I definitely think Reiki, to get an introduction to the chakras, that's one option. Another option could be just simply starting with meditation. And meditation could be just sitting outside and quiet, or it could be listening to a guided meditation. And Insight Timer has some great guided meditations. Then another option could be um, with the Oracle cards and just pulling a card and seeing kind of what comes up for you. And the other like facet with the oracle cards that you could try, that like I just found out about and obsessed with, but using technology. So chat GPT, you can actually take a picture of the oracle card and say, can you interpret this in regards to my question? And so what it's doing is it's saying, okay, let me look in the background of what this card is supposed to mean, and let me connect it for you. Let me do that synthesis for you, which can help really bridge that fear of interpreting it wrong or not having a very exact answer. And I think it's really tangible. So there's that too. Or even quiet journaling and asking yourself how you're feeling, what you're thinking, kind of what's going on for you. And I think that that naturally lends itself, into that spiritual realm. And then if people are blocked in some ways where they feel like I can't be with myself in quiet. Like I know I've heard that before too. And that's a problem with meditation. Like it's triggering, right? That to me says maybe there's some healing that needs to be done on a different level. And one of the other things I had also done was EMDR. It's an eye movement therapy. I did it right after I did Reiki too, which is wild. And it has similar feelings like that. It's very tangible. You don't have to say anything. It's all visualizing, but it's got a huge spiritual element with the visualization. So like there's so many different ways you can start tapping into the spiritual, and then just going where you feel led would be the next step.
I love that, Jess. And let me just add
Yeah.
an addendum to the chat GBT, which is you can ask
Yes.
chat GBT without a photo.
Yes.
Yes, right? You can just say, can you please give, I like to say please to chat
Yes.
GBT because it's so polite. But I say, can you please give me a card reading for today? And it spits something out.
It's
And
wild.
almost every time I'm like, this is wild. There's
Yes.
our word. This is
It's
wild.
wild.
It's wild.
Been asking it for I was just telling Stephanie at the beginning, oh my gosh, I don't know what the energy is today, but there is something in the air, right? And we always have those days, right? And so, my sister was Googling last night, is it a full moon? It is not, but people say all those things. So then I asked
Yeah.
Chat GPT, what is the spiritual energy forecast from yesterday and for today? And it pretty much is aligned with it's difficult energy right now. There's a lot of emotions coming up that need to be surfaced. And so even just something as simple as asking for a spiritual energy forecast for a day and seeing how it aligns with what you're already thinking and feeling. I had sent it to my sister and she was like, I don't understand any of it. I'm like, Chat GPT, break it down. And it breaks it down. And I was like, today is a hard day. I'm like, yes, it is. Thank you.
I've had similar experiences with Chat GPT where I am just shocked at the insight that's been provided and frightened at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
But it's like another opportunity, but this is where the wild breaks through these
Yes.
concretized ideas of the way we think things should be.
It leads quite quickly for me to questions about like what is the nature of reality?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what is the nature of reality? Was it Einstein's phrase about like, but something about like, do we live in a friendly universe or don't we? Right? Do we have a kind universal reality, divine presence, if you want to say that, or don't we? And I think a lot of people, I mean, I think most people have fears about the nature of the universe, you know, along any number of lines. But what strikes me about your story, Jess, and just, you know, having the great privilege of being your friend and your spiritual friend too, is that there is such a kind and responsive, often funny kind of presence, right? It's not this staid father figure. I mean, you had said, you know, like many people did grow up in religious traditions that are more patriarchal. Like there was this image of God, like a guy with the sky with a
Yes.
long flowing beard, you know. That's a lot
Yes.
of people's image of God, you know, just kind of growing up often in cultural Christianity, but not just in that space. And this is wilder, more interesting, more responsive, more interactive.
Yes.
Like the idea that I would see 444 and 555 today,
Look at that. I love
right?
that.
Uh-huh. And then it's like, okay, because I just been thinking about there's a student who's been working this summer, and you know, we've been having these conversations about faith and theology, and he is just brilliant, as many of the students on my
Yep.
campus are, so dear. And he's been feeling lonely and has felt God's absence so keenly. And so we've been talking about just like the daily practice, like what are we paying attention to day by day? And when we get down to that level, like what am I paying attention to?
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, like so God might be in this moment or God might be in that moment. See what happens. Is there a living presence? Is there a dynamic, interactive living presence in your life that wants to have this connection with you?
Always, right?
Always,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
But
and
I
one of
think a lot of us don't quite realize that, or we're coming
Yeah.
from theologies and traditions that don't have as much of the wildness, maybe. I don't know. What are we going to say, Jess?
Well, I just was thinking it's never that far of a reach. I think we just don't name and put words to it. So one of the other things my first Reiki teacher had said to me is, and she is so good at breaking things down, but she said, you know, when I talk about energy, people are immediately like, I don't know what that means. But if I were to walk in a room, you're going to feel the energy, right? Like you know when someone is angry or upset or potentially angry and upset at you. There's a different feel, right? That feels different. You're like, "Oh no, that's definitely energy aimed at me." And that's without any words. I mean, we are just feeling that energy. And so that's something when we wonder like, well, what does energy mean? And like, how does it impact our world? It's every day. It impacts our world every day. We're reading those different situations and people and their energy regularly. And that's just like step one, like just kind of easing into that energy world. And so when she had shared that with me, I thought it was so on point.
I love that, Jess. We're already sensing energy, right? We can sense energy in an email. you know,
Mhm.
energy all around
Mhm.
us all the time, in us.
Yeah. And yet there's always an element of discernment as well to reading the energies, right? And so this is another good reason why it's so important to find the right spiritual practice for you, so you can discern what's the true in all of it, and then when you discern what the true is, you can kind of move into wisdom and apply that to your own life.
That's lovely, Faith. I mean, I think you don't have to leave your own tradition. I mean, in our case, Christianity, like, do not quench the spirit, but test everything,
Mhm.
right? I mean, there's already wisdom
Mhm.
available and present. And I mean, we can talk about science some other time, but the science is here. And
Mhm.
I think, but a lot of us, again, are coming from systems that are really rooted in previous understandings of physics, theology. I mean, sometimes I feel like we're still kind of living in the 18th century in some ways. And our religion really and spiritual, it hasn't really actually caught up yet. So we're living in these like materialist thought systems, but Reiki and the holy, it just wants to constantly break us out of, things that aren't actually even real. We're just getting broken into something that's more wild and more free.
Mm.
So as we're kind of moving to a glorious end, um, Jess has kindly offered. There's been so much wisdom here, Jess. So thank you so much for just offering everything that you are and who you are. I've loved having V, your dog.
I'm so sorry. I'm
A
like,
little
oh goodness.
No, I
No, it's
love
been
it.
lovely. It's like a great chorus of, another conversation partner, invisible and yet distinct
And yet so
conversation,
visible. Yes.
just out of frame.
Mm.
So you have graciously offered to end our time together with a spiritual practice that you are very, as Faith said, yes, adept with. So would you share the oracle deck that you
Yes.
just raised up to the camera?
Yes. So
Yes.
I love all of the Rebecca Campbell ones. It just, honestly, I don't know. There's something about them that I really love. This particular one is cool because there's different readings you can do with the cards, where you can actually set them up in here. Like I don't know. It's very neat.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yes. Actually, I might be able to show you. Yeah, you like put them in. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Okay.
So, but what I saw I would do is pull a card as like a message for the listeners, for anyone listening to this. Okay. And also another thing, so I'm shuffling the deck. Another thing with oracle cards is if something falls out of the deck, if a card falls out of the deck that's not a mistake, that's a card that's meant for you. And I've had it where like a huge chunk will fall out, and coming back to like spirit being funny, like that is, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to interpret 12 cards. Let's go back.
Right.
Let's pick the most critical pieces.
Oh,
So all right, and I'm just decided I'm going to pick this top card, and whenever I do a reading too, I'll tell people just pick whatever card speaks to you, whatever card's jumping out. You don't have to overthink it. I'm going to pull that card. Um, oh my gosh, this is such a cool card.
Ooh,
Can
it's
you guys see?
beautiful.
And it
Yeah, the
yeah,
says,
it is
artwork is
beautiful.
incredible.
and
Yeah.
it says jump in. That's what the message is. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh. So it says say yes to change. So for me, that, and also how cool is that image where the person's kind of jumping into the eye, the main section of the eye. And I think, obviously in water is very spiritual too, with the emotions,
Mhm.
this rainbow kind of coloring, but this could not be clearer, right? It's saying jump in, say yes to change. And so if there's something there's the term like niggling, but like gnawing at you, or something you've been thinking about and you've been hesitant to do, just jumping in and the rest will follow. So that's the message from the cards today.
Okay.
I love that. I also feel like it's a message to perhaps jump into oracle decks and some of the other
Yes.
practices that have been
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yes.
Feels very meta. Thank you, Spirit.
Yes. No, no, all that synchronicity, right? Like there's no mistake that that was the meant to be message for the end of the podcast.
Yeah. And then as I'm sitting here thinking for the listener, where would they go to get an oracle deck to start with? I know Stephanie has several listed on her website on brightsoul.org. If listeners wanted to go, find ones that Stephanie recommends, that would be a great place to start. But there's also wonderful stores you can just go visit and get your
Yeah.
hands on them and look at them and see which one kind of pulls you to it. That's another great way to decide which deck to start with.
Yes. I mean, and I would say to look at different spiritual shops in your area. There's so many beautiful ones. There's one near me. I'm in Northern Connecticut called Bell and Raven. And they have not only a bunch of different decks, but they actually have an intuitive, they call it like a bar, but you sit there and you actually get to make these little jars of where you put your intention in with different herbs and crystals and candles. It's literally so beautiful. And then there's Mandazi that's also near us that they sell a ton of the beads. I did not make either of these bracelets, but I love the crystal bracelets and I make them all the time. And you can actually buy the beads there. We went to Tea and Tarot. That's down. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting. What's
in
the town?
Madison.
Okay. Love Tea and Tarot. So there's a lot of these really sweet little places. And I've gone on vacation and found different places that have really neat options. And then I would also say the Rebecca Campbell deck. You could probably find it on Amazon. You can find the crystals on there as well.
And so
Yeah.
Jess, would you say just let your intuition guide you about what is the best? So if you're in a store that has,
Yes.
a dozen,
Yes.
decks, just let yourself be drawn to what you're drawn to.
I think that that's kind of true for everything. I think there's been so many times where I've felt this like nudge to go do something that feels odd. Like you should go to the grocery store today and go out, just do it. That's what I felt the urge to make sure to do this today and make sure you get this done today. And then lo and behold, if I hadn't gotten it done today, who knows whatever else would happen. And so I think we're given these like little nudges, like, hey, make sure you get this checked out. Hey, follow up on this. And it's never really bad if you don't. It's just like you can avoid whatever extra chaos comes with it. And like the other day I had one, I have really bad allergies and I didn't put my eye drops in and I felt strongly I should put my eye drops in. I'm like, I don't need them today. It's fine. And then I'm at work itching my eyes. I'm like, oh my gosh, but it's just simple.
Yeah.
It's just a simple thing, like just following your gut. And so I do it with shopping. I do it with everything. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you've found not only guidance in following these nudges as you've learned to follow them better and hear them more clearly. You've found really deep meaning behind them as well.
Yes. And even if it seems odd or weird, just trusting it. Like I said, like there was no reason for me to use my eye drops yesterday. I like by logic, right? But that was what I was nudged to do and I decided to ignore it. Then my eyes were itchy, but it's fine, It's just that reminder, I think, for me, like remember to just kind of trust your gut, remember to check in, remember to listen to yourself, listen to your body, at a base level, that's really what it is.
We all need to be reminded of that, all the time, that there's good there to guide us. It's available to us at all times. We can hear and discern that good. And it's also not judgmental and it's not a big deal if we don't,
Yes.
It's okay. It's all.
Yeah.
What is the Julian of Norwich quote? All is well. I
And
can't
all is
remember
well.
now.
And all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well.
There you go. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So just remembering it's there.
Yeah. And it really seems like it's a way of life for you, Jess. Like it is and we didn't get so much into the synchronicity stuff, but it's been kind of woven into what you said, like paying attention to, like being in the matrix, like paying attention to the patterns as they come up. But instead of being trapped in a evil computer program, we're not trapped, but we're in this deeply meaningful and rich world. in which we are not just like things aren't just happening to us, including the divine isn't just like happening to us. We are deeply, inextricably connected to all things, all beings, all things. So
Yes.
there's both there's a web that you're describing, like we're in a web of deep connection and meaning, but also at the same time, the stakes aren't so high in the sense of, we can't, like, it's okay to be fully human. It's okay to ignore
Mm-hmm.
the eye drops. It's okay. There's a kind of like web of grace
Yeah.
that is holding us up. So thank you, Jess. I knew this conversation was going to be joyful. We want to thank you, Jess, for your time today. And I hope that our listeners jump in to whatever is feeling right for them to jump into. You can find me at brightsoul.org. And Faithe, where can they find you?
You can find me at calliopesnest.com.
So thank you again and blessings until next week.